Welcome to Hood Champion Boxing and Sports. Should Jake Paul lift the ban? Big talk going on right now. And I think there's two legitimate sides to the argument on whether he should lift the ban or leave Claressa in MVP jail. Now, someone called in during the live. I know the individual. And they told me that Jake Paul is considering lifting that ban. Now, I'll tell you this. One side of the argument is going to be do not lift the ban. You know, MVP, they didn't ban Claressa over trash talk. They banned her after the altercation with Alycia Baumgardner at the MVP event. And what they cited was zero tolerance as far as their policies towards hostile or aggressive behavior towards fighters, staff, media, or guests. And that's extremely important. Because you better believe Claressa is going to bring a hostile, aggressive behavior towards Tamm Thibeault, Mikaela Mayer, Chantelle Cameron, or any of the fighters over there on MVP. Claressa doesn't care. She will do what she wants, she will say what she wants, and she's not worried about consequences. That's why she's out here saying, MVP, lift the ban, lift the ban. But I think it's important to understand why she was banned in the first place, the zero tolerance policy. Because Jake Paul isn't just promoting fights. He is building an organization. He's building a brand. So if MVP says, we don't tolerate this behavior, and then here it is just a couple months later, reverse itself because Claressa needs access to MVP fighters. A guy like me, you know what I'm going to say? So the rules matter when the money's on the table. Is that what we're doing here, Jizzle P? Jake Paul? And I think that's a dangerous precedent. And I'm just telling you from, my experience. When you're in that leadership capacity, you got to be careful about the decisions you're making because you got all these eyes watching your ass. Jake Paul has invested heavily in women's boxing and currently has major fighters, you know what I'm saying? Mikaela Mayer, Chantelle Cameron, they're going to be fighting. Who wins that fight? I don't know. I think Cameron. I'm just saying that because Mikaela Mayer is a 147-pound fighter going up to 154 for the first time. And Cameron is proven to be a beast at that weight. Doesn't mean Mikaela won't win, but I'm kind of favoring Cameron. But what I'm getting at is Claressa wants one of those two as possible options. So Jake has something to protect, which is the confidence of his fighters. Those women have to have the confidence that Jake Paul's going to do what's right for them, not necessarily for him. If an MVP fighter believes a promoter will protect her from hostile situations, that relationship has value. You know what I'm saying? And that's what I think they feel. They all feel that Jake is going to protect them, make sure they're making the most money they deserve, and put them in the households of the casual fans and grow their profiles and brands. And then, all the money will come from endorsements, sponsorships, and different opportunities, man, to generate multiple income streams. So how about side two of the argument? First side is keep the ban. Women want to feel confident. Side two, lift the ban. Make the fights. Now you say, Hood, what do you feel? I see it both ways. Lift the ban. Shit, I want to see Claressa fight everybody over there. You know what I'm saying? But I also feel like keep it in place. Because she did, slap Alycia and disrespect everyone. So now she needs Jake Paul. She needs access to their fighters. What happened to Pat Poos and Win Records and Demetrius Salita? What happened to them? I thought they were the best promoters in boxing. They're the present and the future. I don't care what anybody says. What Pat Poos said. So why you need Jake Paul? No one over there needs Claressa. They're already saying Claressa could go fight anywhere against anyone and she's going to sell out arenas. All right, go do it. Go do it. But how nice it would be in a perfect world if the ban would get lifted, Claressa would have never done all that bull crap, and then they start to make the fights. Because shit opens up big time, boy, if the MVP ladies and Claressa start scrapping. Now you start talking about both of these, everybody started to make a little bit of that Wu-Tang cream. Cha-ching ching dollar bill, y'all. If Shields wants Mikaela Mayer, if Mayer wants Shields, if the money works, why should a promotional disagreement prevent the fight? That's the ultimate irony. It's a promoter's job to create the biggest fights possible. And Shields desperately needs elite opposition. She just doesn't have it. But they have some over there on MVP. They got some women that can scrap and for Claressa to fight. But I just think after her latest victory, this thing about fighting Lauren Price has a major possibility. I'm just looking at Claressa Shields and Demetrius Salita talking about the discussions are progressing. That sounds good, but Lauren Price, the gold medal, 147-pound fighter coming up to 160. I don't know about all that. But when you think about the promotional value of Claressa Shields against Mikaela Mayer, two American champions, Olympic pedigrees, completely different personalities, an enormous amount of history behind the matchup, that's not just a boxing fight. That's an event. That is an event. But Mayer has to get past Cameron. Now, Mikaela Mayer, let me tell you this. She already expressed an appetite for wanting to fight. The biggest and best fights out there, and this doesn't get any bigger and better than Claressa Shields, But on August 29th, she's supposed to fight Chantelle Cameron. That's either going to open up the conversation even more for a Claressa Shields fight, or it's going to shut it down. You know what I'm saying? So if MVP tells Shields, look, you're banned, and Shields responds, fine, I'll fight somebody else, MVP could potentially lose control of a fight. And fans that desperately want it. And that's where the business gets complicated, because at the end of the day, these promoters, they got to keep their fighters happy, but they got a fan base too. It doesn't make sense to have fighters if fans don't come out and see them. So you don't want to piss off the fans. So Jake Paul has an incredible balancing act that he's got to put on to kind of keep everybody satisfied and happy. And I think he's got to go with the worst of two evils, the better of the two evils. What is going to create the least amount of collateral damage? And I don't know. But I think Mikaela Mayer and Chantelle Cameron, those are two good fights for Claressa Shields. Really good fights, man. Cameron already beat Katie Taylor. She has elite level experience. This is something that Claressa Shields, some of her opponents just didn't have. Some did. But they're just not on the level of Claressa Shields. Claressa is a special fighter. You know what I mean? Personally, you can think what you want about her. But as a fighter, she's damn near perfect. And people are going to say, no, she's not. We just don't agree. You ain't never going to change my mind on that shit. The fucking girl can fight, man. Okay? Kay Scott could fight. Franchon can fight. Amanda can fight. All of these women can fight, but they got some that just rise to the top. Claressa happens to be one of them. Amanda Serrano's one of them. Alycia is one of them. Caroline Dubois is one of them. Lozado and Rosado, the Puerto Rican fighters, they're showing that they're up and away. They can scrap. So you can't take that from Claressa, but I tell you what, man, a Shields versus Cameron matchup will be less about celebrity drama and more about skill versus skill. Because Cameron's got this shit, man. When she beat Katie Taylor, I didn't see that coming. She beat Katie Taylor. And I was like, damn. But this is precisely the kind of fight that could change the conversation around Claressa. So even Claressa and her team know they need access to MVP fighters. MVP doesn't need her. She needs access to them. But the fight that everybody's talking about is Tamm Thibeault. One of the most intriguing options out there. You know what I'm saying? Size, 6 feet tall, southpaw, can keep her distance, got that big mega boom left hand. You would have to think she's going to get there on Claressa. Claressa was struggling to close the distance on K. Scott. And K. Scott doesn't have the skill level of Tamm Thibeault. So if she fought her, you'd have to think that Claressa could be in trouble if she can't figure out how to close that distance and get beyond that jab, and how Tamm steps to her right and shoots that left and comes back with the hook. You know what I mean? Tamm does some really good stuff. But I'm just saying, man, Claressa keeps talking about Lauren Price. She's an Olympian, won a gold medalist. But Thibeault, she's an Olympic medalist, legitimate elite level fighter. She's been to the Olympics twice. But if Shields wants to continue proving that she can dominate the best available competition, Thibeault represents exactly that type of opponent. That makes sense. And then you got Lauren Price. And I mentioned her already, but I'm going to tell you, when I look at it, this is probably the cleanest solution. Because Lauren Price is not part of MVP. So the door is wide open for that fight, you know what I mean? Gold medalist, undefeated, unified champion, and she's being discussed as a Claressa Shields opponent. So Shields doesn't necessarily need MVP to continue building her legacy. But I'm going to tell you, there's a problem. There is a problem. The fans want MVP fights more. So what you going to do? Now, what I think should happen, somebody threw this at me and I thought it was a good idea. You got somebody out there called Hannah Gabriels. I should have grabbed my water and shit. But Hannah Gabriels, that is a good fight for Claressa Shields. Just make the fight. Now, what should happen to me, I think Jake should sign Hannah Gabriels. I think that proposal would be interesting. Sign Hannah for a 1 or 2 fight deal, and then tell Shields, beat Gabriels, and we'll consider the MPV ban. See if Claressa take the bait. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad business strategy. It creates a condition. Shields gets an opportunity to prove that she can compete without creating promotional problems. MVP gets leverage. And the eventual Mayer Shield or Cameron Shield fight becomes even bigger. If Claressa beats Hannah Gabriels, her profile explodes. And nobody should be hating on Hannah. Don't want to hear shit about age, nothing. Just like with K. Scott. Don't come out there and do that. So, because Hannah's older than Scott. But the bottom line is, there's one danger. It could have, like Jake, has created a personal punishment system. Promoters have to be careful not to turn business deals into public vendettas. And that's the only thing that Jake has to be careful of. But the bigger issue, in my opinion, is just credibility. This is what Jake Paul, he's at risk of losing his credibility. If he lifts that ban tomorrow, critics are going to say MVP doesn't stand behind its own fighters. Here's what it is. They don't stand behind their own fighters. That's what they're going to say. But if he refuses indefinitely, critics are going to say Jake Paul is preventing the biggest fights in women's history. So either decision creates criticism, you know? And I see it both ways. I understand. I do. So I think he needs to figure out the smartest approach. Maybe you don't make it personal, make it contractual. You know, MVP could establish clear conditions for returning. No physical confrontations at MVP events. No threatening behavior towards MVP personnel. Respect the venue security policies. No backstage incidents. Clear expectations for media conduct. A formal agreement acknowledging those conditions. Then if Shields agrees, the doors can reopen without Jake appearing weak. So it's just some political bullshit, but he's got to figure it out. He got to try to make both fan bases happy. The ones who want him to lift the ban, the ones who don't want him to lift the ban. But here's the funniest part. Claressa has become one of the biggest talking points in women's boxing, even while being outside the MVP. That's a promotional paradox, folks. You can dislike the controversy, you can dislike her behavior, her virality. You can think social media drama is excessive, but you can't ignore the fact People are talking about her across all 7 continents. And ultimately, attention is currency in boxing. You know what I'm saying? So the question of whether Jake Paul wants that currency circulating inside MVP or outside of it. You know, some of that say that not all money is good money. So for Jake Paul, if he wants that currency circulating inside MVP, I don't know. But I wouldn't recommend Jake just saying, you know what, the band is over. Come fight our fighters. We can kumbaya. That makes the original MVP decision look meaningless, in my opinion. Instead, keep the ban temporarily, but create a path back. That's what I would do. Create a path back. Give Shields a professional standard to meet. If she meets it, then you lift the ban. Then make the biggest fights available. Because ultimately, boxing isn't supposed to be about promoters keeping fighters separated forever. It's supposed to be about who's the best. And Jake has some hammers over there, boy. They get busy. But Claressa's a hammer too. She gets busy. But who's the best? I think the answer can only be determined by putting Claressa Shields in the ring with the Mayer, Cameron, Thibeault. Claressa was at heavyweight. Now she's down at 160. Everybody was saying now she's too heavy. Now she's down now where she can make fights with a lot of different names. Make the fights. She came down. She did it. Yeah, she's an asshole. But when it comes to that boxing, she did it. Don't matter how she made the weight or whatever. It doesn't matter how she looks. She made the weight. She's there now. So I just think make the fight is what is going to happen. But if it doesn't, don't bother me one way or the other. This shit's entertaining. But I do think he's going to do it. You know, MVP's own mission emphasizes creating more creative and controlling and maximizing opportunities for fighters. So the ideal outcome is a structure that protects athletes while still allowing the biggest competitive matchups to happen. That's what he's supposed to do. But when it comes to Claressa, she had a lot to say. And I'll never forget when they were asking her about Jake Paul and MVP, and Claressa said this.
Jake Paul don't like me. I don't like him. He doesn't ever give me my props. He's never given me my props since he came in the game. He tried to steal my name and give it to Amanda Serrano. When I built the name up, I am the name. I have the accolades for it. He tried to come and just give her my and just say, like, forget me. I don't matter. She's the GOAT. She's the real GOAT. And I just found it very disrespectful. You know, when I already had shared the title with her willingly already because she fought at the smaller weight classes. But I just feel like I could never work with people like that who do stuff like that. So no.
Now, she said she could never work with people like that. But now she out here asking for them to lift the ban. So what is it? What is it? You never gonna work with people like that? I guess there's a difference of wanting to work with them, being signed to them, and then fighting their fighters. So I guess there's a bit of a discernment between the two. But the bottom line is, I wouldn't want to go where I don't belong. But I feel Claressa needs access to the MVP ladies. Simple. They've locked down about 90% of the market. She has nowhere to go. Demetrius Salita has nothing left to offer her. And that K. Scott fight, yes, she had the titles. But that's not like fighting Mikaela Mayer, Chantelle Cameron, or fighting Tamm Thibeault. And we all know that. Even K. Scott knows that. That being said, Claressa Shields, a.k.a. Man, please. Is Jake Paul going to lift that ban? You think he should lift the ban? Leave it in the comments below. Yo, I'm in the breeze.